our Mental Health Fest 2024. Thank you for joining us here today. And before we get started, I'll be giving a brief background on Trauma Speaks in case you are new here and this is your first time encountering us. Trauma Speaks is a mental health nonprofit organization that was established in August 2021. One of our main objectives is to normalize discussions on mental health, to reduce the stigma surrounding mental health issues and topics, as well as encourage individuals that it is okay to seek support and professional help. That mental health is not just about personality disorders, psychosis, and so on, but also about life stressors, transitions, and phases of life changes, and many more. Though we do cater information for the general population, our organization's focus is towards helping youth and adolescents become more familiar about mental health and available support. Obviously, considering we are a nonprofit organization, we do rely upon the goodness of others to help us with our mission. If you'd like to donate, you can do so through clicking support on our Instagram page, through the link in our bio. You can also donate your time if you'd like to be a volunteer or would like to collaborate with us for an event. Now I'm giving over to Oren and parental adjustment to transitions and life phase changes in the family. Here you go.
Thank you, Ramona. So my presentation today, firstly, my name is Oren Gafni. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a licensed professional clinical counselor. And my presentation today is on how parents can help their families adjust to significant lifestyle changes. And throughout the presentation, I'll use different various words that all mean changes. You know, it could be transitions, major events, difficult adjustments, stressors. I'll be using all these sorts of words to mean the same thing. So when you see a title like that, you might be asking yourself, what is this presentation going to be about? There are all kinds of changes that families can go through. It's a very broad title. How can this presentation give useful input for all of them? That's a good question. And my answer to that is that what all major lifestyle changes have in common is they require adjustments, and adjustments create stress. This presentation focuses on how to cope with and minimize the stress of big lifestyle changes for the family through communication, support, and problem solving. So, what do we mean by stress? Well, according to the World Health Organization, stress can be defined as a state of worry or mental tension created by a difficult situation. Stress is a natural human response that prompts us to address challenges and threats in our lives. Everyone experiences stress to some degree. The way we respond to stress, however, makes a big difference to our overall well-being. And it's really that last part that is going to be the emphasis of this presentation, is how parents can respond to stressful situations for the family in a skillful way. So one really important aspect of all of this is that positive, or what we think of as positive, as well as what we think of as negative changes in lifestyle can both place stressful demands on family. So some negative events that can cause stress are divorce, illness of a family member, death of a family member, job loss and financial insecurity, cultural and generational conflict within the family, children struggling academically or with disciplinary issues, and many more types of events. And it sort of feels obvious how these types of events could cause stress for a family. But what's less intuitive is that positive events can also cause stress for a family. So some examples of that could be a child moving to college, parents getting a new job, parents getting a more involved role at work, children getting their driver's license, children beginning dating, parents of the family retiring, and this is not a exhaustive list. So just to kind of illustrate, the idea of a what seems like a positive event, still sort of placing stress and challenge on the family. Kind of imagine a certain case scenario here. A family of four, all living in the same home. The mother and the father are married, with two elementary school age children. The father is a stay-at-home dad with sporadic freelance work online. He's been looking for work that is more involved, challenging, fun, and better paying than the work he currently has. Mother works long hours from morning until evening in the city during the weekdays. The family has been struggling financially, barely keeping up with their bills and mortgage. And then the father gets a great career opportunity in a different state of the country. This can be seen as a positive development for the family or an upgrade, especially for the dad. However, even a change like this brings challenging adjustments. Who's going to bring the children to school? It was the father before, but now he'll be gone most of the time. Who will supervise them after school until mom gets home? Remember, she gets home in the evenings. How will all the housework get done? Will the children receive enough attention from their parents? Will the children be raised with a different dynamic, with mom usually being the only parent in the home? How often should dad commute back home? How often will he be able to commute back home if he takes this new job? What will mom and dad do to keep their marriage healthy and active long distance? Will too much burden fall onto mom between her full-time job as well as all the things she needs to do she would need to do to take care of the children and the housework, that added load of duties? Will dad be happier with a more fulfilling career, even with the trade-off of spending most of his time away from the family? And what are the priorities in this situation? This is really just kind of a scenario to help highlight that positive events or opportunities still can be stressful for a family because they require adjustment, and adjustment creates stress. In many instances, especially with younger children, the primary cause of stress on children is the effects of stress on the parents. And here are a few ways in this slide in which parents' stress can lead to their children experiencing stress. So the first and kind of simplest way is just witnessing a stressed parent for a child. The second way is that stressful events for a parent can affect that parent's parenting behavior towards their child in negative and harmful ways. So if their parenting is negatively impacted by their stress, then that will negatively affect the child and cause the child stress. And then the last way that I've listed here is that the stress for parents can harm their relationship with each other. It can harm their patterns of interacting with each other, which children tend to be sensitive towards, and that can cause them stress to witness that. So let's talk about next the way that parenting can be negatively impacted by stress. When experiencing stress, it's important to monitor changes in behavior towards one's children. Stress can obviously contribute to hostile, demeaning, or abusive behavior from a parent toward their children. More often, however, it leads to various forms of neglect or dropping certain positive habits and behaviors with one's children. And these positive habits and behaviors can include things like bonding activities, important enforcement of rules and boundaries, parents being emotionally available and interested in their children's experiences, and parents affirming and encouraging their children's efforts and accomplishments. It's important that one doesn't let such positive behaviors and habits fall to the wayside during difficult adjustment periods. And then there's the way that stress can create conflict between parents. Unhealthy communication between parents, which can manifest as contempt, the silent treatment, criticism, a lack of receptivity and openness, poor boundaries, and a lack of respect toward one another, and other breakdowns in relating to each other, do not only affect the parents and their partnership, but also the children, who can either directly see or implicitly sense problems between their parents, most of the time anyway. A fragmented parental unit leaves children feeling less safe, and people don't think about this as much, I think, in these sorts of situations, could be used by children as an opportunity to challenge family rules and structure. Think about it in terms of that saying, like when the cat's away, the mice will play. Well, this situation that I'm talking about here can be kind of thought of as when the cats are fighting, the mice will test the limits. Okay, so for these previous reasons, it's important in this parent-partner relationship as well to keep doing what keeps it good. So, especially during difficult episodes. So this means that it's essential to maintain positive habits and patterns of interaction between the parents. Don't drop the good things that you've been doing, the healthy lifestyle habits during stress, which can be a very natural thing to do because something's calling your attention and energy to a different focus. So it can be natural to drop good positive habits during times of stress, but it's really important not to, especially more than ever during those times. So how do we know stress when we see it? How does it show? How can we spot signs of stress in the family system? So for children, signs of stress can include unusual difficulty adjusting to changes, more than would be expected. Tantrums, worse academic performance than usual, aggression and transgressing rules or boundaries of others. And when it comes to aggression and transgressing rules and boundaries of others, in the more extreme cases, this sort of behavior can build into conduct disorders or delinquency. And in the most extreme cases, for older children, it can build into criminal behavior. For spouses, stress can manifest as reduced relationship satisfaction, and reduced relationship satisfaction can reveal itself through increased agitation with spouse and less affection. And agitation and less affection between spouses are especially telling signs of decreased relationship satisfaction when they're occurring most of the time they're around each other and not just during a few particularly tense situations or sensitive topics of conversation. For individuals in general, stress can show through social withdrawal, which can be isolation or speech disorders in the case of children at times. And stress can also show for individuals through various forms of compulsions, addictions, self-harm, and of course, suicidal behaviors in the most extreme cases. So before I move into sort of healthy ways for parents to respond to stressful changes in the family, there's an important mindset to view these major events through. And that is seeing dysfunctional behaviors of family members as a part of the family dynamic rather than a particular family member's problem. The family is the patient, not any one person. Some family members' behaviors may be more obviously problematic than others, but every family member's behavior plays a role in every other family member's behavior. And it's adaptive for all family members to recognize and embrace their influence in the family. Another way to say all this is it's us against the problem. And that applies even when the problem involves conflict between family members. Even when two family members sort of have conflict, the best way to think about it isn't that their conflict is with each other. It's more that their conflict is with the conflict between them. They're kind of a team against their sort of inability to create an understanding between them. And this team mentality applies even from parents to their children. Even though consequences and structure are important to maintain, a battle between family members never occurs. There are authorities in the family, but everyone's in it together. The family is one team. It's kind of like a coach when you think about it. The coach is sort of like a leader or an authority figure, but he's not really like he's never sort of in a struggle with the players. At least that's not a healthy way for them to think about it. They all have the same interest. So factors which can increase a family's stress during major changes in lifestyle. These are also called risk factors. These are different parts of a family's situation which can increase their stress during a major change. These factors can also be in place prior to the introduction of the stressful change. So distant family relationships, that is, relationships that are cold or not very communicative or not trusting, are a risk factor, and these can be within the immediate or extended family. Rigid and negative thinking is a big deep risk factor, and rigid thinking refers to not being open-minded to different options or ways of doing things. And negative thinking includes seeing situations as unlucky or as serious threats to a person's identity or way of life that they can't bear to lose. Lack of external resources, which can include friends, extended family, professional help, and beyond. It can be very useful to have these things, and to not have these things put someone in a disadvantage during a major adjustment. Reacting with panic mode and staying there when a person or when a group of people experiences stressful moments. Rejecting emotions, whether that's one's own emotions or others. I mean, rejecting emotional expression here. Or in the case of self, it can just be rejecting one's own emotions. That can be like stuffing, denying your own emotions, or dismissing or punishing others for the expressions of their emotions. So rejecting emotions, self or others, and not having others for empathy, validation, and support is a huge risk factor. As we'll talk about before, that's very relevant to the family kind of using itself as internal support. Experiencing multiple family stressors simultaneously. And by a stressor just means any situation that causes stress. Experiencing multiple stressors simultaneously causes more stress, all things being equal, than just experiencing one stressor at a time. And then over controlling behavior or not respecting other family members' needs and beliefs is also a risk factor. So in contrast to all of that, what are some factors which decrease the family's stress during major changes in lifestyle? So these are also called protective factors, and these are different parts of a family's situation which can reduce their stress during a major change. Sometimes these things exist prior to the major transition. They may be part of a family's patterns or situation before the big change, or it might be something they start doing to help themselves cope with the change in lifestyle. So you'll notice, you might notice that many of these protective factors are just kind of the flipped upside down reverse of the risk factors, but not all of them. Okay, so protective factors include, these aren't exhaustive lists, as I'm sure you can imagine. You might have thought of some that risks and protective factors that I'm not going to list. But important protective factors include close family relationships, can be immediate or extended. Flexible thinking, which is considering alternative responses to the change and using positive interpretations. And flexible thinking also involves an ability to recognize and accept features of a situation which can't be changed. And that's important on a deep level, because when a person accepts features of their situation that they can't change, it creates a better relationship to those aspects of the situation of acceptance, rather than kind of a feeling of being violated. And also, like accepting the parts of your situation that you can't change also creates freedom for a person to shift their energy and attention to things in their situation that they can affect with their behavior. So it makes them more efficient. And it's also positive interpretations, which is an aspect of flexible thinking, can include seeing a big change as a challenge or opportunity. Those tend to be more kind of positive terms, positive concepts. And hurtful events can be reframed as valuable learning experiences for transformation and growth. Being the next one is access to external resources. We've gone over kind of what those can be before. Being able to move forward mentally and emotionally past moments of tension within the family. So that's this kind of like ability to reset psychologically. And that's really, really critical for a person or for a group of people. It's it kind of gives an opportunity for a fresh start, even though there's going to be tense moments. Habits of using deep breathing and other relaxation strategies can be a really helpful factor. And by relaxation strategies, I'm also including in that grounding techniques and visualization. And grounding techniques are are techniques that use one's senses or their attention and focus on a task in their immediate environment to draw their focus away from unproductive thinking. And visualization is imagining a scene that creates feelings of relaxation or kind of pleasure or joy for a person. And the better you get at visualizing that, at imagining that scene, the stronger those feelings that a person associates with it are felt. And so you can imagine how it could be really useful to be able to just trigger those feelings by imagining that scene during a stressful moment. But that's a very powerful strategy for people who have a visual imagination. Fully acknowledging one's emotions and having others for validation and support. That's kind of the reverse of what we talked about before. If a parent or the entire family has any control over the matter, then experiencing fewer stressors, or if possible, just one at a time, is easier to cope with than many stressors at once. Respect for the other family members' needs and beliefs and ability to compromise is really important during major changes for the family. And the ability to compromise can really just be thought of as balancing one's own needs with the family's need for stability and with the needs of other family members. And then finally, to just round out these protective factors listed here, routines of whole family activities like walks, structured meals, movie nights, game nights, etc., can bring a feeling of belonging, relaxation, joy, and safety to family members. So, how can parents respond to major family events? Well, the simplest way, although it's not always possible, is to take on the problem directly. If the event causing the family stress is something that you can resolve on your own reasonably, and I'm kind of, using the word you, kind of imagining that you're the parent in the situation, kind of potentially role playing, if you will. If the event causing the family stress is something that you can resolve on your own reasonably, then the sooner you do, the fewer and less severe the negative family behaviors will be from that event. Examples could be seeing a doctor about a health issue which is concerning the rest of your family, or taking steps to secure a confident loan for financial issues. To go back to kind of loop back to the present, to the case example of the family of 4 from before, with a father who got the good job opportunity out of the state. If he starts looking for and interviewing for jobs locally or remote jobs to see whether he can find ones that are just as fulfilling for him and just as well paying as the offer he got, but those ones won't have the distance issue, then that could solve many of the adjustment challenges that came from the opportunity of this offer. And so that could be a very powerful way that he could respond to this situation, assuming that he finds another opportunity like that. But it's a good idea, to explore regardless. It's also worth noting, as far as taking on the problem, sort of a parent taking on these sort of challenges by themselves, that it's a judgment call whether in what way to tell the family before you take action. That may or may not be necessary or helpful. So imagine, for instance, that uh, you're experiencing physical symptoms that are concerning you, um, but you don't know what they are. It could be better to sort of see a doctor to confirm what those physical symptoms are first before telling your family about it, because it might be nothing. The doctor might reveal that there isn't anything to be concerned about, and uh, not telling your family about it before you know what's going on could save them a period of unnecessary worry. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. Often, however, family stressors cannot be reasonably resolved quickly by a single family member. So let's talk about responding to major family events using the family as internal support. And the family relying on itself for support completely revolves around communication. So what is good communication? Good communication involves good listening, and good listening involves good eye contact, which I'm trying my best to do, and balancing with reading off of my slides and notes. Um, and good listening also involves observing nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication uh, is sort of made up of things like tone of voice, facial expression, posture, gestures, pacing of speech, context of the communication, and more things. Things, I probably couldn't list them all if I tried. And good listening uh, involves generally not interrupting, although there are exceptions to this. Contrary to cliches, interrupting is not usually, but often can be appropriate or even unreasonable not to do. We've all seen examples like someone getting carried away and taking up way more than their share of time talking, or someone who isn't aware of information that's important to what they're saying. And these can be situations where it's appropriate to briefly interrupt someone. But it's always important, regardless, to be respectful and caring to whoever is talking, even when appropriately interrupting them. So another aspect of good communication is meta communication. And meta communication is communicating about communicating. And if that sounds confusing, that's because it is. But hopefully, sort of talking about the following important form of meta communication will kind of give you some sense of what meta communication means, or how it can be used in a helpful way. So one important form of meta communication for like between family members during major events is when describing distress to another person. What type of support are you seeking from them? Are you seeking someone to listen to or validate you? Are you seeking someone to give advice to you or get feedback from? Are you seeking someone to involve themselves and intervene directly with the problem? Someone to kind of help take care of the problem with you or for you? Likewise, if someone approaches you speaking of something that bothers them, you can ask what they're seeking from you. what type of support they're looking for from you before inviting them to continue. So here's an example of good listening skills, in my opinion. As you can see in this meme, it would seem that Willy Wonka has very good eye contact, and he has a very gentle, accepting demeanor, and he's curious, seems curious and interested about who he's directing his attention towards. He's even asking for communication. Please tell me more. That suggests curiosity, right? Okay, it's more to sort of expand more about communication within the family. Family meetings can be extremely important during sort of difficult transitions. And this can be family meetings can happen in various combinations. They can be the whole family, but they can also be just some of the family members, or even, one-on-one interactions. Family meetings can be helpful in showing support, empathy, and validation. They can be helpful for assessing options for how to proceed as a family. And they develop a shared understanding of what can be expected from the situation and how family members will behave going forward. And it could be useful to have multiple different kind of arrangements of family meetings. Some whole family meetings, some one-on-one, some just some of the family members. A whole family meeting can kind of give everyone a fuller picture of where each family member sort of stands, but what their positions are, what they're going through, their needs. But a one-on-one communication between family members can allow some family members to get deeper into their personal experiences of the family dynamic, and perhaps be more transparent and less guarded than they would be speaking in front of the whole family. So you can't really talk about communication, I believe, in a complete way without talking about empathy. And it's really important to emphasize that empathy can be shown without agreeing with the other person's point of view. It's and I'll kind of that can even be said beforehand, like if you're trying to let someone know that you sort of feel what they're feeling in some way, that you care about what they're feeling, that you understand what they're feeling or thinking, you can make it clear that by exploring that with them, you're not and by gaining understanding of that, by checking that with them, you're not agreeing or disagreeing with what they're saying. So how accurate one's impression is of another family member's position can be checked by asking, is this an accurate reading of your attitude with this or that issue? It could be a good idea to even spend maybe a first family meeting just making sure that everyone understands everyone else's perspectives and beliefs correctly in terms of what's going on and what everyone believes sort of should be done or needs to be done, and how everyone feels and what their needs are. It could be useful to first go over that before processing together how to go forward, or getting into negotiations or brainstorming or disagreements. oh yeah. And then empathy, this kind of can't be stressed enough in a way. Empathy does not equal agreement. And a person can clarify this. You know, imagine someone saying, I'm trying to understand your point of view on this, like without getting it. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I just want to make sure I understand you. That can be clarified. If the stressor is major or ongoing, or it affects the family in complicated ways, then creating a regular schedule for family meetings could become necessary. Parents should make themselves available to their children, and this can be done through meta communication to help them know when the children of the family want to talk. And you can utilize meta communication to learn when children want support by asking a question like, I want to support you when you need someone to talk to, but I don't want to push you if you don't need someone to talk to. How can I check with you what you need? That's a good example of meta communication. So there's some more communication strategies that I just kind of want to go over. I statements can be extremely useful for communicating within a family or in general. And I statements have a particular structure to them. It's a type of statement or sentence. It goes, I feel, and then insert, an emotion like disregarded, worried, resentful, when, and then comes a description of a behavior or situation. And it takes some practice for this sort of structure of a statement to come naturally. So I put a link in this bullet point, and hopefully this PowerPoint can be made available. But this link goes to a worksheet that gives many different practice opportunities for to practice I statements. So when discussing problem behaviors or giving constructive criticisms, focus should be framed in terms of behaviors or particular situations, not personality traits. So it's better to say something like, it's more skillful to say something like, I feel uncared for and disrespected when I ask you a question and you don't pause the show you're watching or look at me when you answer. That's more skillful than saying something like, by the way, that statement is a great example of an I statement. That's more skillful than saying, you're selfish, and that's why you don't look at me and don't pause the TV when I ask you something during your shows. You can see how the second version of that statement could cause someone to feel blamed or become defensive. So an important communication note is not to take on an angry or aggressive tone with family members when discussing a problem. Even if you're communicating that problem makes you angry and they're involved in the problem, use a soft and even tone. This avoids a feeling of blaming. And this last point is critical when explaining or implementing consequences to children. Displaying emotions while implementing consequences or punishments, puts kids in an emotional mode themselves. that causes unnecessary additional distress for them. It makes the situation feel personal to them, and it derails them from reflecting on their behaviors and reducing the likelihood that they'll learn from these experiences, because they're not thinking about what they did and the relationship between their behaviors and the consequences. They might be thinking about how angry you seemed with them, or just kind of feeling the emotion, like and how that emotion might be contagious for them. So that was all about communication within the family. External support can also be very valuable for parents responding to major family events, or for any family members for that matter. So as we kind of went over before, friends and extended family can be sources of external support. And it's worth thinking about that you might want to use discretion when seeking support from extended family. You might want to use your judgment, because even though they can be helpful, there might be certain situations that people feel sensitively about, that they don't want certain extended family members to know that they or their immediate family are going through. So that's something to keep in mind, to consider. Neighbors and local community are also can be an important source of external support. Support groups, clergy like pastors, imams, rabbis, and the like, and there are many more sources of external support. The active support can take many forms. It's not just emotional and consultative. It can be looking after children or pets. It can be practical assistance for household issues, lending of resources like tools or equipment or money, getting together to have fun, even though that doesn't feel like a sacrifice. That can be really kind of nourishing and valuable for to someone who has loved ones or friends that they can have fun with. There's just infinite examples of how a person can of how people can support each other. Professional resources can be a useful support, and this can include individual therapy, group therapy, or family therapy. And each one of these has its advantages and disadvantages. Family therapy can be ideal or very powerful for issues that the entire family is going through, because the whole family makes changes to their behaviors and their attitudes regarding whatever major event they're going through or challenges they're going through at the same time. So no family member is left out, and that's important, because if a single family member keeps behaving in their old ways, that could kind of prompt or trigger other family members to respond to that family member's behavior in the way that they're used to responding, and the family could kind of slip back into its old patterns, even if one person isn't kind of like isn't making changes. But that said, family therapy can be very difficult to maintain, because it can be very difficult to gather the whole family consistently in therapy sessions. Whatever support you choose to use, uh, it's recommended. I would recommend like utilizing the meta communication, that the types of meta communication that we've discussed before. So that is what type of support or communication would be helpful for you right now. So just to review the topics, to scan over the topics we've addressed during this presentation. We have addressed what types of events can cause stress for families. We've gone over what problems stressful changes can cause for the health of the family, and that is between parent partners and romantic or spousal partners, as well as between parents and children. How to spot signs of stress in the family, or how to spot signs of stress in family members. We've discussed, or I've discussed with you as being a gracious audience, how factors that make it, or the different factors that make families more vulnerable, as well as factors that make families more resilient during stressful changes. We've gone over how to communicate effectively with one's family during stressful events and changes. And we've discussed resources for support during major changes for the family, the different resources that exist. Thank you very much. Here's my sources. Hopefully they're available to you guys after that, but if not, take a snapshot or whatever suits you if you want to keep them. And that's my presentation. I'm willing to take questions if you have them. Thank you all for attending. I really appreciate it. Hopefully
Okay, so Oren, we got a few questions from Ellie. Stress can stem from positive and negative adjustments, but can stress itself ever be positive, or is it only negative?
Stress itself. So I'm not totally like, there's a couple ways that I'm interpreting your question, and that's a really interesting question. So there's the kind of sort of spiritual wisdom way of interpreting that question, or the kind of grand scheme view of things, that where one could say that they're grateful for challenges that they've gone through in their life because it's made them stronger and more resilient to stress as a person. So in that way, sure, stress itself can be positive. It can kind of habituate someone to better handling stress, assuming that it doesn't cause them too much trauma or harm. But also, stress directly can be positive from a more scientific standpoint, and that's called eustress sometimes. Like EU, which I think is like a Latin prefix for like good or positive, like euphoria, or and so there is a term called eustress, which is a form of stress that is kind of like positive excitement. So that can be a directly positive form of stress. Think about like when someone's really excited, like an adrenaline junkie who's really excited to like go skydiving or something, or someone who's like looking forward to a movie that they've been wanting to see, or a date that they're really excited for, stuff, that type of stuff. That's kind of that's a form of stress. We don't think about it that way precisely because it's positive, but it does kind of challenge the body even and the mind, even though we don't mind it. We are about to go through kind of an adjustment, and the body does kind of get tense or excited, but there's a positive interpretation to all of it on a very deep level.
Okay, that's
Thank
great.
you.
We have a few more questions, quite a few. So let's get started. Anonymous is asking, what are some cultural considerations that may influence how families approach and manage transitions?
That is really important. Um, and if I felt comfortable sort of talking your ear off for longer, I probably would have dedicated at least one slide to that. Uh, but there's a variety of ways that culture can affect the way a family handles major changes, especially relying on itself for internal support or the way that it communicates within itself, um, but also externally. So some cultures are less there's more of a stigma in some cultures towards certain forms of towards expression of emotion, or at least expression of certain types of emotion. So that could fall into that risk factor that I mentioned before of suppressing or denying certain emotions, or discouraging or punishing other family members for expressing certain emotions. And that could reduce the opportunity for validation, empathy, and support within the family. That could also kind of inhibit family members from seeking useful support outside of the family, and perhaps even more so from seeking professional help. I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with the reality that mental health treatment is has quite a stigma in certain, um, perhaps in almost all cultures, but certainly in some cultures, particularly, or more so than others. There are other ways that culture could affect a family problem solving. I'm not going to get too deep into it because it's so rich that there's just kind of no end to it. But another way that comes to mind that I'm just going to briefly mention is uh, family structure. So kind of like where the decision making uh, lies, kind of where the authority is kind of given. You could call it that. In some cultures, it's in our culture, it tends to be, with the parents, and increasingly the children are becoming, rightly or wrongly, increasingly the children are becoming bigger and bigger stakeholders in decision making in more recent years in American culture and in Western cultures. Um, but or yeah, and like European cultures, some European cultures as well. But but in some cultures, it's all with the father, or maybe with the mother, or sometimes with, the grandparents. So that can definitely affect uh, the way that the family sort of processes these adjustments, and how the family and parents respond to these events. Thank you. Hopefully that wasn't too long-winded.
That worked really good. Thank you for the answer. Really interesting. We have a tricky question here from Anonymous. How can knowledge of an affair impact the unit, especially the children? And how can this be addressed if the parents do decide to work it out?
Oh, that is difficult. And I think part of the reason why that's difficult, um to is because that affair situations can have different features. So there is a question of the sort of how it would affect the kids, and that depends on the for them to learn about these things, and that can depend on like a variety of things, their age, their personalities, um but also kind of how the situation is framed to them, um which is and so how it's told to them matters, but also, what are the parents' experience, perhaps one of the first things to look at when it comes to the question was kind of whether to tell the children about it. Was that the exact like specific focus of the question, Ramona?
What was yours right now? Sorry, I couldn't hear you. My Wi-Fi
Um,
wasn't.
it's no problem. Was the kind of exact focus of the question whether to tell the children or how to tell them about it?
Well, how the knowledge can affect telling the children. So how can knowledge of an affair impact the unit, especially the children? And how can this be addressed if the parents do decide to work it out? So would you tell the children or you wouldn't?
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about like whether the question of whether or not to tell the children. Um, it like I was kind of that's kind of what I assumed the exact focus of the question was. So like I just said, sort of the children, you know, the children, uh, kind of different the children themselves is one factor to take into consideration when it comes to whether parents should tell them or not. Um, age, personalities, but also the parents, maybe more important than that, is the parents' experience uh of that affair. Like it's can the parent explain these things without in a healthy, skilled, and stable way? And can they sort of go into this subject with the children without it sort of bringing uh toxic feelings that put them into conflict with the other parent? So can the parents kind of bring this up to the children in a skillful way without getting into conflict with each other? Like if they're able to do that, then they can go into more depth, I think, in terms of what happened, and uh in terms of explanation of what happened. If there's still sort of like sensitivity and sort of resentment and soreness there, or a feeling of betrayal, uh then it might be better to not sort of trigger conflict by getting into depth about what happened, um and focus more on just kind of what needs to be done going forward. And so that's what I would say about whether to talk to the kids about it. And I think that um, the whole family communication could be important, because then you don't just get one side or the other, because like one parent will have a very different perspective of that event than the other, and that could be confusing and kind of bewildering or upsetting for children to deal with.
Okay, great. Thank you for asking to
That is a
someone
challenge.
who doesn't want to be named. We have a few more. Can you tell us from Ellie, are there any exercises to strengthen empathy?
Oh, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. I like that. I've never really thought about whether there's exercises to strengthen empathy. I think the closest thing that I can well, I don't know if you could purposefully trigger empathy, and you could probably effectively do that. I don't know if that would make you better at being empathetic intentionally. So you could watch, like Forrest Gump or various, like sort of emotional children's movies or something like that, and you'll feel empathy, and those might be able to kind of like trigger empathy in a powerful way in you. But I don't know if that makes you better at it as a skill. But feel free to try it. but I do think that one way, although it's not something that someone could do. I don't know if it qualifies as an exercise per se, but the main way that comes to mind for me is just using it um, whenever you have an opportunity to listen to or pay attention to another person communicating. So just intentionally and mindfully um, trying to kind of sense what a person is experiencing uh, while they're talking, or even just while observing them. They don't even necessarily need to be talking or communicating with you in any way. You could do
Okay.
while people watching, I suppose.
That's great. When we talk about empathy, can you also, since it's another question, how would you recommend reaching out to gain more external support? Not just like the empathy from within, but also like the external support. How do you go that way?
It uh it depends on uh it depends on kind of what external support you're talking about, but I think really kind of comfort is your guide. Like the people who you feel the safest with in terms of revealing what you're going through and seeking support from, they are a good candidate for who to approach for support. Um, because not that comfort the fact that you're more comfortable with them than anyone else uh, doesn't only likely mean that they're less likely to betray your trust in some way, or more likely to sort of respect you for what you reveal to them, uh, and less likely to judge. But that comfort is also really important in terms of your ability to share with them. You'll be able to process your issue more deeply the more comfortable you feel with a support. Um, yeah, you'll be able to process your issue more deeply uh, the more comfortable you feel with whoever you're going to for support. That being said, um, it's kind of that could be the person who you feel, I would underline, the most comfortable with, could be a good guide in terms of who you should approach for support. Um, but uh, you might not feel like super comfortable with anybody, and then it might be kind of and if you want external support, you might need to kind of mentally prepare yourself and emotionally prepare yourself with kind of being assertive and outgoing in terms of approaching and asking someone uh, for support, telling them that you need support, maybe kind of role playing it to get more confident and comfortable with reaching out like that. Thanks for that question.
Yeah. So last question, since we're running out of time, how do you recommend resolving conflict and stress that might be brought on by an extended family member?
It's are we assuming that it's for just just oneself, or for their entire, or for their entire family feels kind of directly stressed by this extended family member?
I
That
would go with the entire family being stressed by that extended family member to stay on topic.
Okay, nice. Good. That makes sense. Um, so that could be firstly, there is strength and empowerment in the fact that this affects the whole family. So the at least the whole immediate family. So one could consult with whole family meetings, even potentially, over what's a good way to over how this affects everyone. Is it even clear that this extended family member's behavior is affecting all the members of the immediate family in the same way? Because if it's not, that's kind of important. That's kind of important to realize, because to kind of get rid of any false assumptions. Um, and then the whole family can kind of uh, put their minds together to come up with a better way than any one family member could, of how to respond to that extended family member's behavior, and maybe coming up with skillful ways, um, maybe kind of a we statement as opposed to an I statement, which would be the same thing. It would just start with "we feel," like to skillfully bring up that concern with that extended family member, so that they don't feel kind of ganged up on or defensive. And in fact, a way of communicating like that might be extra important if the entire family member, or if the entire family is communicating it. Because on the one hand, if I'm doing something that's upsetting someone's entire family, it might be more, it's more persuasive. If I know that it's bothering all of them, I have more of an indication that maybe I'm doing something wrong, or I should change something about my behavior if it's affecting all those people instead of just one person. But at the same time, uh, if I hear from that, if I might also feel more defensive, because it's kind of harsher and more to take in that something that I was doing was bothering, many people at the same time. So then it becomes really maybe more important, even though it's more powerful, to be kind of tactful in the way that's communicated, in the way that issue is communicated to the family member. We feel, blank, disrespected or whatever, uh, when, and then sort of describe the situation or their behavior. That's the problem. And those statements, I statements, we statements, can also be kind of flipped around for like a proposed solution. So I think that we would feel much more respected, like if you handle, or if you did this in these similar types of situations, instead of this sort of behavior, that would affect us in these. We believe that might affect us differently in these ways. So it's kind of like slightly different version that could be useful of a I statement or we statement.
Thank you for asking all those questions. So this brings us to our end. First things first, I would like to thank you, Ellie's dog, for being absolutely cute. And thank you to Oren for sharing your experience with our audience. We'd also like to thank the audience and followers for joining us on this event. Is there anything you would like to add or share in terms of events or additional resources, Oren, or will we find everything in the PowerPoint?
You'll find everything in the PowerPoint. There'll also be the notes that I read off of, but that's not, I don't mind you seeing that. It's like that, the extra notes. It might actually just kind of give extra useful information. And other than that, I don't have anything else to share, and I just want to thank you all very much for attending, and I hope that this discussion and information will be helpful to you. Yeah, and best wishes dealing with family events.
Well, thank you so much. And as a reminder, we have had amazing events so far, and I hope you all enjoyed our Mental Health Fest. And I'm thankful for everyone who came and asked interesting questions. If you would like to donate to our cause, if monetary, you can do so through clicking support on our Instagram page, through our website or Venmo at Trauma Speaks, or you can also donate your time. We always look for new volunteers, so happy if you apply. You can send an email to admin@traumaspeaks.org. And we are all excited to see you at our new event. So thank you.